I also think too, we have a lot of people reach out to us, especially with the supervision class, but we have a lot of people reach out to us and ask like, when do I know it's time to leave? And if you're really miserable where you're at and you've been thinking about it a lot and like wondering if you should stay or go, that really is your answer. Like,
if you're asking the question, you already answered
it. Hey there, my name's Ashley Church.
And I'm Erin West.
We were once newly promoted crime scene and latent print supervisors on mutual struggle buses as we both simultaneously tried to navigate through the challenges within our forensic units.
Now we run a business where we create tools and resources that we wish we had had to make these transitions easier. We like to talk about the experiences we've had in the forensic field, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the hopes to create awareness around these issues and move the needle forward to create positive change in the forensic community.
So if you're a forensic professional, regardless of your years of experience, who's not afraid to dive into real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable topics, you're in the right place.
This is the Forensics Unfiltered podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Forensics Unfiltered. We are so glad to have you here. And today we're talking about a very specific group of people. And if this episode makes you feel a little called out, that's probably a sign you're exactly who it's for. If you've been in forensic work for somewhere between 7, 10, 15 years, you're probably really good at your job. You know what you're doing, you've built credibility, people can trust your work, and yet something just feels off. You might be burnt out, you might be bored, or quietly wondering whether this is really it for you for the next 20 years. But here's the part no one talks about enough. When you hit this stage of your career, the problem usually isn't competence, it's identity. You've outgrown survival mode, but you haven't been given a clear picture of what next looks like. And in forensic careers, the options often feel limited. You stay put, or you get promoted, or you leave entirely. So in this episode, we're talking about the mid-career identity crisis, why it's so common in forensics, why it doesn't mean you failed or lost passion, and what kinds of realistic next steps actually exist. Because feeling stuck doesn't mean you're ungrateful, and wanting something different doesn't mean you don't care about the work. It just means you've changed. Let's talk about what that might look like for you. Okay, Erin, I think both of us have probably hit a point in our career where we've had that situation, like something feels off or you just don't feel complete, right? So let's just kind of explore what that looked like for each one of us. So at what point did you first realize maybe I'm really good at this job, but something just feels off, something doesn't feel right?
I think for me, the thing that always pops up over and over again in my career is just boredom. So I'm definitely someone that likes to learn new things. I like to meet new people. I like to always be growing and challenging myself. And after a few years, when you've learned enough about the job that the job just becomes rinsing and repeating, where you're going to work every day and you do the same exact thing, and then you go home and you come back and you do it again and you do it again and you do it again, and there's no more growth that's really happening, I get really bored. And so it's at that point where I start being like, can I continue to do this for a really prolonged period of time? That's always kind of been my thing. At this point in my career, I've very much accepted that I'm just not one of those people that's going to stay doing the same exact thing for 20 years. Like, I can't even wrap my brain around that. And I've accepted that about myself. But that for me is usually what it is that I've gotten to a point where I'm not really learning or growing in the capacity I'm at in the department, and I get pretty bored, and then I start looking at other opportunities. So that was a sign for me.
Yeah, I think for me, It was like a combination of things. So I was started at a big agency, which is kind of, it can be exciting and there's always something new to learn. But I also think there's other opportunities to branch out as well. So after a couple of years, you can be a trainer. So you get trained on being a trainer, and that's exciting. Now you have a trainee and you're teaching them new things, and it's not as redundant. They also had the latent print unit. They've had a firearms unit. They had a DNA lab that they made. They had a photo lab and stuff like that. So I didn't feel in that particular agency like stuck because of the job. For me, it was also some office politics. But I went over to an agency that was much smaller, and the workload was probably a quarter of the workload. So for me, going from like busy all of the time to now there's actually downtime, which is crazy. There's actually opportunities for like, there's no reports on my desk. What am I going to do with myself? So in that particular agency, I definitely felt, like you said, that boredom kind of hits, and there wasn't nearly as many opportunities to branch out to different aspects of forensics. There wasn't opportunities. There was one supervisor spot at the time. Okay. And so you're just waiting for that person to retire or move on. So that wasn't very inspiring to stay, not necessarily like stay in the field, but definitely stay at the agency, because it's like, okay, after a few years and I figured out how you do things here and I've become pretty proficient, what is filling my cup now?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's pretty common with a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah. So why do we think like mid-career professionals feel more stuck than early career forensic professionals?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is really starting over, right? And money, like combined into both. So at this point in my career, I've been in forensics for a long time and I have learned some different aspects of forensics. But if I didn't like where I worked and didn't like what I was doing and wanted to go somewhere else, I would have to start over. And the thought of going all the way back to the beginning and running through somebody's training program when I've already been doing this for years and years and years, I think not. No, thank you. Hard pass. But also money, right? So I worked as a CSI for several years, and then I went up and worked as a government contractor for several years. And then when I came back down to Florida, I was really interested in getting into DNA. Now, I had done crime scene and I had done latent prints. I had never done DNA. I did have my degree and everything in it, but I would have to start all the way back over at the beginning, which I was willing to do. However, the pay to start all the way over was atrocious. And I had already been in the field for 10 years. So instead of doing DNA, which is what I really wanted to do, I went and got a job as a certified latent print examiner because that paid well. So I think that sometimes we get stuck, because when you're earlier in your career too, you also don't have all the responsibilities that you have when you're 10 years in. Maybe you were single and you just had your little studio apartment, and now 10 years in, you're married with 2 kids and all of, a mortgage and all of these responsibilities. So it's not as easy to just jump ship and go somewhere else and take a pay cut and start over and all of those things. So that's my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah. I think so too. I think, especially if you're in a more rural area and you have roots, like you said, maybe some people have already started a family, you would have to move in order to, seek another opportunity out in forensics.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's not possible. It's not something that they're willing to do. And so what do? You stay stuck in the agency that you're working at, because you would have to uproot and move somewhere else to get a decent paying job. And let's be real, a lot of the jobs out there like aren't very good paying at all. And like you said, for me to jump ship, I wasn't married yet, or no, I was newly married. Hadn't had a family yet. So it was a lot easier for me to go to another agency where it was a similar commute, but I also took a pay cut in order to do that. And it was a lot easier, like you said, when you don't have other human beings depending on you and your income. So it was a much easier yes for me. But had I started a family, that's something that would definitely hold me back and make me feel stuck as well. It's because, with this transition to move to a different agency, I would have to take a pay cut. So I definitely think that is what people feel stuck in their current positions for sure. Okay, so we've talked about our personal experiences of feeling stuck in our mid-careers in forensics, but how can someone tell whether they're in that place? Maybe burnt out, bored, misaligned. Maybe this is the wrong career for them, type of thing.
Yeah, we talked about this in one of our recent episodes, but one of the signs for me that I was starting to get burnt out and like maybe the position that I was in wasn't going to be a 20-year position, but for me, it was definitely starting to feel like agitation and irritation with call outs, my caseload, my coworkers, all of that kind of stuff, starting to feel just like general frustration about having to respond to things that I didn't feel like our unit should have to respond to. And we see that kind of stuff very commonly when we're teaching, our supervision and our trainer classes where people who came into the field and were very excited and pumped to be there and so excited every time they got a call out after a few years, they start to be really irritated with, I took 20 calls this month and my coworker took 3, or my agency forces us to respond out to everything when it's not necessary. Like our supervisors never got our back. All of those kinds of things start to add up. And like all that beginning energy and excitement, it slowly starts to dwindle away. So for me, those were some of the signs that it was time for me to move on. And I think probably some of you guys listening to are like, oh, I've been feeling that way for years. I just haven't moved on. And it's hard to refresh yourself in the position that you're in when you're feeling that way. It's much easier, obviously, to start over somewhere new, even though that's scary, because it gives you that breath of fresh air for the field again and re-energizes you for being in forensics again.
Yeah, I think I experienced some of the similar things, and I've witnessed it too of other people. Maybe when I was like really like a newbie early on in my career, and a lot of my trainers were already like, well, I'm stuck here. There was one CSI, she started back when I think civilians in Florida had a 25-year retirement instead of a 30, or I think even now it's like a 35-year retirement. So she felt stuck. Like if she went somewhere else, she would have to start that over again. Oh, I can make it another 10 years. 10 years is okay because to
Yeah.
be miserable or feel like you're stuck because of some of the benefits too. But yeah, I saw some other people that left the forensic field entirely. That they chose to during their mid-year or mid-career crisis, anytime they would get a call out, even like the ringtone, they would have like an outburst or like start crying or like throw the phone in anger. Like that's not good. It's not good for your mental health. It's obviously not good for the cases either, because even if you
Yeah.
still maintain a really good high work performance, the people that working around you, like it's just not good to fester on that when you stay stuck. Do you think, kind of going along those lines, like if you're really good at the job, does it make it harder for people to leave or even question the possibility of staying and sticking it out?
I mean, I think that the main reason people don't leave is straight up fear, right? So as humans, we are like, this is the devil that we know, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we are here, we're not happy here, but I know exactly how much I get paid. I know exactly who my coworkers are. I know exactly what to expect when I come into work. So the fact that I'm miserable, I mean, I could go somewhere else and be miserable too. So that's very scary. So I think that people stay stuck obviously money and family circumstances, all of that kind of stuff comes into account. But you can have all those things and still make change in your life and still go work somewhere new and have that be a wonderful thing. So I think most of the time we stay stuck where we're at just because we have so much fear about going somewhere else.
Yeah. Do you think there's also a fear in that like identity? So like maybe you're seen as the expert, people value your opinion, and then maybe like the identity gets tangled up with job title and your status at one agency and going to a new one, and like you are now the newbie. You have to prove yourself all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, possibly. But I do feel like if you really are that person, right? If you really do have that level of knowledge and experience and you really are the bee's knees, it's not going to take a new agency very long to recognize that, you know? I mean, you can be humble enough to go back through their training program and really you should if you've ever been to any of our classes, you know, so you can learn all the parts and pieces about their job, but you could become a very valuable member of their team very quickly, you know? So yes, it's starting over new can be hard, being the newbie, all of that can be hard. But if you really are at the place where you're at, a top performer and someone who's very knowledgeable, I mean, that will all go with you. That knowledge doesn't disappear when you transfer. So the flip side of it might also be true where you think you're the bee's knees.
Before we jump back in, I want to tell you a quick story that I think you will relate to. In one of our forensic labs, we had this latent print processing flowchart just hanging on the wall. It was old and crusty. Who knows how long it had been there? And it was that sad brown and beige color. You know the one I'm talking about because somehow every forensic lab seems to have this one processing flowchart. Not only was it unpleasant to look at, it really wasn't that easy to follow. And honestly, most people didn't use it at all. It just blended into the background of the lab wall and became white noise. You forgot it was even there. And then on the rare occasion someone would actually reference it, it would suggest a reagent or a technique we hadn't used in a while. So now you're standing there scratching your head thinking, okay, how exactly do we apply this again? This usually meant walking back to our desk, digging through an SOP, or reading an SDS sheet. And let's be honest, written instructions are not always helpful in the moment. A video would have been so much better. That exact frustration is why we created the comprehensive latent print processing flowchart poster, now updated for 2026. This poster is huge. It's 48 by 36 inches and combines the full processing workflows for the most common surface types into one clear, modern reference. And can I tell you about the coolest feature of this flowchart and what makes it interactive? The flowchart includes QR codes, and when you scan that QR code, it links you directly to a step-by-step video demonstration. Boom! While you're standing right there in front of the flowchart, you can get a quick refresher on reagents and techniques that you haven't used in a while. For the 2026 update, we've added a QR-linked video for small particle reagent. We've also incorporated VMD steps for wet, non-porous, and greasy surfaces. And we've also added acid violet 17 for bloody surface processing. So what's on your wall reflects current techniques and best practices used in forensic labs today. Now, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast episode, you may not be able to see the flowchart, so you'll just have to trust me or click the link below to see for yourself. But we've intentionally designed this flowchart to be something you actually look at, use, and trust. Head to gapsciencemerch.com, that's gapsciencemerch.com, to order the 2026 updated version of the comprehensive latent print processing flowchart poster and turn that wall space into something that truly supports your work. All right, back to the episode.
The flip side of it might also be true where you think you're the bee's knees, but you're actually not.
Yeah.
And so maybe that is more of the fear. You know, you go to a new department who
People are going
maybe
to find
has,
out whether you
yeah,
know what you're
maybe has
talking
a
about or
lot
not.
more technology, a lot of stuff that you're not accustomed to. And maybe that's scary. Maybe you're a rock star where you're at with the tools that you have, and you wouldn't be a rock star somewhere else because you haven't had, like even Ashley's example, the agency that she transferred from had a much higher call rate. And so maybe you work at a small department and you are a rock star at your small department and you're afraid to go to the big department and make more money because you know that you're going to be working
It's going to be a
a
challenge.
much heavier caseload. Yeah. So I do think all of those things I think are scary for sure.
So once you realize, like, all right, I've got to do something, I'm willing to do something, let's explore some next steps. Let's start with some lateral moves that people can make that maybe they don't realize are available within their own agency.
Yeah, I think lateral moves. So obviously, if you have different forensic departments, that's a great thing to do. So our department, we have a crime scene unit, a latent print unit, and honestly, all in the forensic division, we have the evidence unit and we have our body worn camera units. That's all considered part of forensics. We could easily shuffle people around in those units and it would keep all of those knowledge and skills inside the department. We'd still be able to have those people be part of our team. And I am really of the mindset that sometimes people just need a break, right?
Yes.
Now, everyone's department is not like that, of course, but people's life circumstances change. We had someone who was a crime scene investigator who had twins. It was her first baby, and she had twins. She did not want to work the on-call life anymore. We moved her over to Layton's. She went through the Layton training program. She's an amazing examiner. That was a great fit for her. We retained her. We retained all of that knowledge inside our department. And because she was already so well versed in forensics, now she has that knowledge in Layton's. Like that still benefits us as a whole. So I think lateral moves like that can be great. But there's also other places in the department where forensic people commonly laterally move to. Like I've seen a lot of crime scene investigators transfer to like crime analysts and like intel analysts,
Mhm.
things like that. So that's still kind of keeping your same rate of pay. You're still being involved in criminal investigations. You still might even have some call outs where, when there's homicides and things like that, the intel analysts are coming in to help with that kind of stuff. Still kind of keeps your brain juices going with all the investigative stuff that they're doing. Keeps you at the department, keeps you with the retirement, all of that kind of stuff, and then just gives you a break from forensics. And if you are doing all of that in good standing, in good faith, and you just genuinely need a break, like I just can't be on call right now, I have toddlers or something like that, you take another opportunity at the department, there's nothing to say that if a position came open a few years down the road that you couldn't transfer back when you were at a different stage in your life. So I think,
I actually saw that happen. So I was
yeah,
in the crime scene unit. There was a person that, needed a break from crime scene. They went over to Layton's, stayed in Layton's a couple years, decided Layton's wasn't for them. And when a position came back open in crime scene, they came back and were part of the team.
yeah,
So there's nothing to say that if you make a lateral move, it's permanent. Like you could
yeah,
hop around and see what fits best. And sometimes too, just reaching out to those units, letting them know, hey, I'm here, I'm interested, and job shadowing and seeing if it's a good fit. I think those are all really good steps. And it
yeah.
kind of will lift your spirits up, I think. When you start taking action of like, I feel stuck, but I'm going to figure out like what my next step is going to be, it kind of gives you some hope.
Yeah, for sure. And communicating with your supervisor. I can't say most, we've heard crazy stories about supervisors out there. But if one of my staff members came to me and was like, hey, I had a baby, I went out, I came back to work, I'm having a hard time with on call. Like, I'm really interested in doing something else. I really want to stay here. I love this department. I'm just interested in doing something else for a little while they're little, And then maybe I can revisit coming back to forensics when they're older and like me being on call isn't that big of a deal. Like I would support that, especially if they were just very upfront about like these are all the circumstances that are going on. So if I can try to retain people at the department in my division somewhere, that is beneficial.
Yeah. And let's also explore what career expansion could look like, even if you're staying within the same unit without a promotion. Because maybe that promotion is hard to come by, or sometimes it's sworn and you have no hope of getting a promotion. So,
True.
what are some things that people can do to kind of expand their career a little bit, staying in the same unit without getting promoted?
Well, we have had that happen too, as well, which is a good thing to mention. Ashley mentioned that there are a lot of departments where the forensic professionals are sworn. We had a CSI who was really passionate about digital forensics, and our digital forensic unit is sworn. It's entirely sworn. And so she was in forensics for years. She was a fabulous CSI.
Okay. Yeah.
Fabulous CSI. Yeah. She went to the academy, became sworn, and then ended up in digital forensics, which was what she wanted to do. So I think sometimes there's so many areas of forensics. Like I didn't even know all of the things you could do in forensics when I was in college. I just had in my brain that I was going to be a CSI. It wasn't really until I got into the field that I saw all the different things that you could do. And really, the hard part is getting your foot in the door, right? So you get your foot in the door, you get some experience under your belt. But as a result of that, if you can learn to network, build a lot of relationships with a lot of people, other departments, the medical examiner's office, the state attorney's office. Like our state attorneys were recently hiring a latent examiner just to do their like judgment and sentences, just so they had a latent examiner in house. Like, who would have thought you could go work for the courthouse, as a latent examiner, or the post office, or there's so many places you can work in forensics. So some of the external things, obviously you can go to another department. And I think that's sometimes where we get our brains locked into, right? Is like, well, if I don't work for this law enforcement agency, I'm just going to go work for another law enforcement agency. But you don't have to do that. So there are state labs, private labs, there are companies like Walmart and Target and stuff like that that are hiring forensic people. I just got an email or a letter the other day from Target talking about how they were transferring they were notifying us that they were transferring their forensic division. Like, who would have known that Target had their own forensic division? And then besides that, you think of all the vendors. Foster and Freeman's and Andy and Brass Tracks and all of those different companies that sell forensic products to forensic professionals, right? They are coming to you and explain how you can use this light source on like all of those are all forensic jobs. And then also we've seen a lot of people starting their own businesses where they're teaching, offering services. A lot of people teach, so they are professors or, teaching classes and stuff like that. So there's so much more than just going to another law enforcement agency out there for people in forensics.
Yeah. And for the people that maybe branching out is just not in the cards for you right now, I feel like there are a lot of things to help you get unstuck where you're currently at. So you could be taking on trainees if you haven't before. I see some people that like put the line in the sand, I will never be a trainer, but I think that can be very rewarding. I also think if you can find cross-training opportunities, or like you can be an advocate if you're really into, like, maybe your agency doesn't have a Faro, a 3D laser scanner, and maybe you're the one that like brings that on, like finds the grant opportunities, like you make that your responsibility, your little project, and then when that comes in, you're the go-to person for Faro. And I just think taking those side projects, ownerships of something, is very rewarding and can kind of help you, like I said, kind of feel unstuck in where you're currently at.
I think you also really have to keep an open mind of everything that's out there. Like where I am in my career right now, I never could have guessed that this is where I would end up or that this was the path my career would take. But I always kind of kept my mind open to when opportunities landed in my lap. I was like, tell me more. I'm intrigued, you know? So just kind of keeping your eyes open for that stuff. Things can land in your lap that you never would have imagined you would do. And if you're just disregarding all of that, you're
Yeah,
never going to see those opportunities, you know?
for sure. There are so many other things in the cards for you if you just open to it. Do you feel like there was any type of, because I know I feel this right now. Do you feel like there is like any type of identity crisis in assuming a new identity? Like I'm no longer a crime scene investigator. Now I'm a latent print examiner. Now I'm a supervisor. Now I'm a manager. Now I own a company. I feel like sometimes we reminisce about like, oh, that was actually a really fun part of my career, and now that's not something that I do anymore.
Yeah. I think for me now, I've changed my job so much, like so many times that I've let that go. But the initial transition from crime scene to latent examiner was very hard. I could tell that I was getting very burnt out. I did crime scene for about 5 years. And at my agency, I requested, we each had to learn a secondary discipline, and everyone had their choice. So we had some people that did blood stains, some people that did shooting reconstruction. I really wanted to learn latents. I really liked the thought of taking something like all the way through, you know? So I started learning latents. And when I transferred to Layton's and crime scene, and also Layton's was 8 to 5, no call outs. That sounded real dreamy. But when I was in Layton's and crime scene got called out to stuff, I felt so sad. Like I was missing out, and I would see them all getting their gear and like heading out to the scene. And I was like, okay, guys, I'll be here, you know?
Yeah.
So it felt really sad. I felt like I was missing out and like all that excitement and everything. I wasn't part of it anymore. So that was hard. That was a hard transition. I vividly remember feeling sad when like everyone packed up their stuff and left the office and I was just behind. But every position has its pros and cons, you know?
Yeah.
So after a while being in Layton's, there were things that were very exciting about Layton's, you know, when we identified somebody and things like that. And then also there were times where they were rolling out to a crime scene in 100-degree weather. And I was like, hey guys, I'll be here in the office, you know?
Yeah.
So every job has its pros and cons. But yes, the identity thing was hard. I think with that first transition for sure.
I think I know it's stupid because we've been doing this for so long, but I think it just hit me like this past year where I think about crime scene. And I've been like, crime scene was something I wanted to do since I was 13. So it was like part of my identity for
Yeah.
so long. And I think this year I just came to terms with like, I'm serving the forensic field in a different way and it's very rewarding and I love it. But also the thought of like, I don't think I'll be a crime scene investigator again ever. I'm just like, damn, that part of my identity, like if I'm not a crime scene investigator, then who am I? That like those
I
like
feel like
intrusive
now
thoughts
too,
creep
I mean,
in.
you're the same, but like we're all forensic professionals, you know. It really doesn't matter what we do. We're all contributing to the forensic field in some way. And just because you've changed exactly how you contribute doesn't mean that you're not a forensic professional. So I was really big when because I'm a manager right now. And when I was first a manager, the only two units I had were forensics and latent. So I always referred to us as forensics, right? And then we got the evidence unit, and I'm very big on us being a big team. So I started telling them that they were part of forensics, right? We're all forensics. We're all processing the evidence, collecting, maintaining the evidence, analyzing the evidence. We're all forensics, you know? Well, now I have the body worn cameras and digital evidence, and we're all just forensics. We're all part of the forensic division, you know? So, and we're all contributing something important, but very different. And I also don't work crime scene or latents or evidence at all anymore. I mean, I basically do paperwork, you know? I mean, I do paperwork and like write SOPs and grants and budgets and stuff like that. That's what I do now. But I'd still consider myself to be a forensic professional, even though I don't touch the work anymore. So I think I think you can identify yourself as a forensic professional and contributing to the forensic community in a lot of different ways, even if it doesn't look like what you first intended for it to look like, for sure.
And I think all of this is important. It's very sad, some of the rhetoric that I see on like a lot of the forensic Facebook groups where people have openly said, like, I'm hitting a mid-career identity crisis. I don't know what to do. It could be burned out. It could be boredom. It could be frustrated with their leadership. It could be
Yeah.
frustrated that they don't make any money and they have all of these degrees and credentials, and yet their salary isn't reflected. Some people are very supportive and they're like, yes, I've been there. Have you looked into this? Have you seen this? But a lot of the other rhetoric too around that is like, well, you knew that getting into the field, this is what it was going to be like, and it was going to be hard, and you should just love the work. But again, people are hitting this mid-career identity crisis at like 5 or 7 years. And if you want forensic units to be successful, you don't want the turnaround in your forensic units to just be a couple years and you're constantly training people. So let's talk about what it would mean to build a career that supports your life, you as a person, and not letting that work consume you, or letting that thought of like, I feel stuck and I can't go anywhere.
Yeah. This is what comes to mind when you ask that question. If you are going to spend, 20, 25, 30 years of your career in forensics, think about the changes that you're going to make in your career in 30 years, just as a human, just the changes that are going to happen in your life as a human, right? And expecting that what you started at and the position that you were doing and all of that is going to match you through a whole 30 years of your life, and that those values are going to match your personal values through your whole entire career, I just think is unrealistic. So I think we have to be more okay with the fact that it was okay that I started my career, and that the point where I was in my life right then, I was so excited about this job. But my life circumstances have changed. I have gotten married. I have a family. It could be other things, it could be that you're stressed and overwhelmed and sick, or people have sick family members that they're taking care of. And like all of these things happen in our lives, right? And the job that I had when I started, it doesn't match the lifestyle that I have now. So it's totally okay to think that over the course of 25, 30 years, you might change what you're doing several times to kind of match the lifestyle that you have, or what you value. What I valued when I was 25, when I got into the field, is not what I value now. My life has changed a lot. So I wouldn't choose that same job now. I would not be a crime scene investigator now. I would not, I mean, I've lived enough life. I wouldn't do that. When I started that, I was so excited about it. I loved it. I couldn't wait to get called out. When we had homicides and the whole team was out there, I thought that was the most fun thing ever. I loved working with all the CSIs and all the detectives and having everybody out there. I don't want to do that now. I don't want to get called out to burglaries at 3 o'clock in the morning. I want to sleep. I want to be home with my family. Now, I am a manager. I'm still on call. I'm still responding to crime scenes, but not in the same capacity. So if I was going to change my career path now, I wouldn't be seeking out that kind of job. My life has changed. So
Yeah.
I think that's acceptable for us to have that mentality of like, the person you are now isn't the person you were 7 years ago when you started your career. It's okay to want something different, to want different hours, different days, different challenges, all of that. I think we should expect that, our job isn't going to match us through our whole entire life, really.
I actually really love that perspective. That's actually something Ben, my husband, is going through right now. Hopefully, he doesn't mind me sharing this. But he had a change in leadership. The supervisor that he loved and made his work like so rewarding and he loved going to work, had left the company. And so now he's grappling with like, what are the next steps? And promotion's just not an option at this company. So he's thinking of like, okay, well, if I were to go somewhere else, where would it be? And sometimes you can catch him like even limiting himself to chemist positions and like, well,
Yeah.
you don't have to be a chemist. You could be whatever what job do you want to go explore, you know? But
That's the identity though.
that's the
Yeah.
mindset of like, well, I have to, stay in this field or in this like, no, you don't. You could go
Yeah.
do something completely different.
You totally don't have to. And that like Ashley was saying earlier, that is the identity, right? Where we went to school for this, we've spent our whole career in this, like what else could I possibly do? Anything else, like
Yeah.
really. You know, I mean, now obviously he's going to try to find a job with a similar rate of pay, maybe using his skill set if he can. But I do think there are things that he could probably do unrelated to chemistry that would be great, that he would enjoy, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And I've
yeah.
seen that with forensic professionals too, where they leave the field and, maybe they go work at a bank, like, and there's like a whole side, there's actual forensic accountants, but then there's, other people that aren't considered forensics and they still apply like analytical skills. There's people that we know that have gone and worked at blood banks or organ donation. I didn't even know
Yeah.
that was a thing where it's
Yes.
kind of like adjacent to forensics, but it's completely different. And the world is an open book. You can go anywhere. You do not have to stay in forensics for the sake of that's my identity, or I would feel guilty because that's what my degree's in, or whatever. Or like that limiting belief, like, well, I don't have any other skills. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. I agree with that. We definitely know quite a few people who have left the field entirely and are perfectly happy doing something else, well paid, maybe even better paid, you know, and doing something unrelated to forensics. But we do have to let go of that piece of it if that's the path that we want to take, you know, thinking that we invested all this time and energy and money into our degree and our career, and so we can't change that, you know. We can if we really want to.
So if there's anyone listening right now that's like everything we've talked about, they're like, I feel this in my bones. Okay. What would you say to them to get them to start giving themselves permission to want something different and make moves into exploring other options to feel unstuck?
So if you are unhappy where you're at for whatever reason, you're not going to go get another job tomorrow, right? So there's no hurt in looking around, seeing what's available, maybe even applying a few places, maybe even doing interviews, all the way up until you take and start that job. You can always change your mind, you know, and maybe along that path, you will find a department that you love. You'll find other, you know, supervisors that you'd love to work for. You find other avenues of things that might interest you, you know? Like there's so many steps before you go start working somewhere else, but I feel like people just don't even start down that path, you know? We had a friend who she hates where she works and she got a job opportunity somewhere else and they hadn't even negotiated salary with her. There was the opportunity for salary negotiation. I think she was just scared to go, but she was like, I think I'm just gonna turn it down because, you know, I don't even know that they'll pay me what I need to get paid. And we were like, what do you mean? You haven't even talked to them yet, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and we get so far ahead of ourselves. Like, you can go tour other places. You can talk to vendors. You can apply for jobs. You can look on LinkedIn, see what's available out there. Is there anything interesting? You could take a class at a college and see if you're interested in some other area, digital forensics or something like that, you know? Many of your agencies offer educational assistance. I mean, you could go back to school for something completely different and have the department pay for it. Like, there's a lot of other things that you could do to kind of just open your mind to other things that are out there without ever like taking the full leap.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many things that you could be doing, but the point is you got to do something. If you're feeling like that, if you felt like that for years, I can tell you right now, because we've been on the other side of feeling unstuck. Once you make that leap, whatever that looks like for you, it could look like staying in your department. It could look like leaving for a different agency. It could look like leaving the field entirely. You will feel so much lighter. There will be purpose back in your life. The people around you will be like, "Oh my gosh, you just seem like you're so happy." But you can't remain in that stuck situation or mindset because it's just going to deteriorate you. It's going to be unpleasant for the people around you. Your relationships aren't going to be that great. But you gotta do something. You gotta start being curious, like Erin said, just kind of exploring, talking to people. Hey, what do you do? Or you go to a conference and you go to all of the vendor booths, like, hey, explain to me more about what you guys do, and like, are you looking for anybody, or like, do you enjoy what you do? That type of thing.
Yeah.
I think all of those, even the littlest steps, are steps towards something better.
Yeah. I also think too, we have a lot of people reach out to us, especially with the supervision class, but we have a lot of people reach out to us and ask like, when do I know it's time to leave? And we always talk about like, if you're really miserable where you're at and you've been thinking about it a lot and like wondering if you should stay or go, that really is your answer. Like,
if you're asking the question, you already answered it.
Yes, it's time. So, and you can stay where you're at and continue to be miserable and try to, typically what happens is, you know, people will be miserable and kind of check out of work, and that's not great for you or your team, you know. But at the end of the day, if you're asking yourself if it's time, then it probably already is time.
Yep. Mic drop. I've got nothing else.
All right, guys. So if you're in that mid-career space where you've been questioning things, we want you to hear this clearly. You're not broken, you're not weak, and you are not failing in your career. You're just responding to growth. Forensic careers don't always do a great job of showing people what evolution can look like outside of just promotions or burnout. But there are many more options than most of us were ever told about inside the field, adjacent to it, and sometimes completely outside of it. You don't have to figure out everything right now. You don't have to make a drastic move tomorrow. Sometimes the next step is simply giving yourself permission to ask better questions about what you want, what you're good at, and what kind of life you want your work to support. And if this episode sparked a lot of thoughts or maybe even some discomfort, that's okay. That's usually where clarity starts. In our next episode, we're going to talk about something that often fuels this mid-career burnout: decision fatigue and cognitive load, and why just power through it is one of the most unrealistic and risky expectations in forensic work. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to Forensics Unfiltered. If you liked this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review letting us know specifically what you liked about this topic? It will only take a minute, but it will really help us plan future episodes so we can bring you more topics that you want to listen to. We'll be sure to provide any links from today's episode in our show notes on our website. Head to www.gapscience.com. Until next time, stay safe out there.